Hey, Writer Moms. Good morning. I hope you guys have all been enjoying some of the other conference sessions that have been happening and the live genre breakouts. I'm happy you're here. I'm Everly, and we're going to talk a bit about the psychology behind goal setting. So I want to preface the whole workshop by saying I'm not an expert in goal setting, goal planning. My background is in psychology, but that doesn't make me an expert in goal setting in any way. But I feel like that's kind of why I wanted to look into this more. In the last couple of years, I've tried really hard to get better about setting goals and figuring out how to stick to them and what are some of the tips and tricks of doing that. And because my background is in psychology, I do tend to geek out when it comes to brain science and that kind of thing. So I wanted to share with you some of the things I found, and hopefully it'll help you with reaching your goals too. So hopefully by now you've heard about the Writer Moms Journal, which is coming out in October. It's 30 practical ways to find your writing focus, and in there we do touch on goal setting. This is a much more deep dive in that, but if you find kind of these research-based tips to be really helpful to you and honing kind of some of your writing craft, the journal and the accompanying workbook is based on research, not just from psychology, but from other areas, to help find the best researched way to kind of achieve some of those things. So I will share my screen and then we'll get going on the psychology of goal setting.
Okay, so as the name implies, we're going to talk about goal setting using psych research to figure out how to set really great goals and how to achieve them. So there's quite a wide body of research done in the area of psychology when it comes to goal setting. Lots of research kind of kicked off in the 1930s and has been going strong ever since. So most of that research in goal setting and goal achievement is linked to areas of like educational psychology, sports psych, evolution, which are all have really great examples on how to set goals. But what I want to do today is really tie it to writing specific goals. There are some really great tie-ins when it comes especially to educational psych and some of the examples they use for goal setting, but we're going to make it even more specific to writing when we can. So goal setting is one of those things that seem kind of innocuous at the beginning. You know, what could be more simple? You create a goal, you work towards the goal, done kind of thing. So it's a seemingly simple thing that you set out on. However, the how on how to create effective goals can be a bit elusive when you get right into it. And then you'll notice as we kind of go through some of the different theories and some of the brain science, it really comes down to the why of the goal that's kind of make it or break it. So first off, I want to talk a bit about the different types of goals. So starting off kind of on the, I don't want to say easiest, but on the simplest to understand are process goals. So repeating the same action to form a habit. So if we talk about writing, this is having the goal of sitting to write every day. You're creating a habit. You're not really looking at how much you're writing or what you're writing. You just want to get in the habit of doing it. Then when we move on to performance goals, this is where we make it a bit more quantitative. We want to make a little bit more specific. So change that goal to when we sit to write, we're going to write 500 words per session. And we track that and see how we do, and we modify it. And then with the intention of hopefully bumping that up to, you know, maybe in a couple months, we get to 600 words per writing session and so on. And then we come to outcome goals, which is combining the two, process and performance, to get to that big picture goal. So if we go back to a writing example, say you want to finish your first draft by the end of the year, that would be an outcome goal. That's a long-term goal you'd like to accomplish. It's something that will take a lot of time and effort, and it's something you can break down into those process and performance goals to get there. So, for example, if you look at what you have left to finish in your first draft between now and December 31st, and you say, okay, well, to finish my first draft, I have to finish about 10,000 words a month. And you can track that and figure out how to break it down from there. And then your process goal, once you figured the other two steps out, is okay, well, in order to get 10,000 words a month, I'm going to have to sit and write probably at least 5 times a week. So I'm going to make my process goal Monday to Friday, right after I tuck the kids into bed. I'm going to sit and write so I can hit that 10,000 words a month, so I can hit that goal of finishing my first draft by the new year. So these outcome goals can somewhat be out of your control. In the example I just shared with the first draft, that's, pretty much within your control. When it comes to being a writer mom, there's always your kid gets sick and suddenly you're up all night and you're not getting anything done in the evenings. And that, there always is an element of not in your control. Some goals even more so. So for example, if your outcome goal is to become an agented author by, X certain day, that goal is out of your control. You can't actually achieve that without someone else kind of putting in some effort too, or, that magic X factor when it comes to finding an agent. So you can create a performance goal of querying agents 3 times a week for 6 months. And you can do a process goal of, sharing your query letter with your critique group on a regular basis or something like that. But still that outcome goal is not really in your control. So that's why it's important to pay attention to all 3 of these types of goals when you're creating those short-term and long-term goals, because you need all of them. Like, you need that big picture long-term goal, something that you're really that is an incentive for your day-to-day goals that can get monotonous and pretty boring pretty fast. It's nice to have an eye on the prize, but it's the process and performance goals that are going to really get you to that long-term outcome goal. So I said I wasn't going to be too deep on brain science, but I just couldn't help myself. So this is your brain on goals. There is a cluster of cells at the base of your brain called the reticular activating system. And its main function is to filter and prioritize all the many different sensory stimulus that are coming into your brain. So all day long, there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stimuli filtering through your brain from all your different senses. And the RAS will filter them to help you be alert and focused. There's no way you can attend your attention to all those different stimuli coming in. You need to figure out how to prioritize what you're focusing on, what you're paying attention to. And that's the job of the RAS. In this way, it also has control over which things enter your consciousness. So a really simple example of that is if you've ever bought a new vehicle and suddenly you start seeing that same vehicle everywhere. That is your RAS filtering that information in. So before you purchased that vehicle, that wasn't important information to have. That's something that it just filtered through, filed away. It wasn't important. But now after you've made that purchase, your brain will signify that that is important now, and it'll show you all the other exact same models of vehicle that you now own. So that's your RAS at work. Your RAS is really important when it comes to goal setting, and there's 2 ways to encourage it to kind of help you along. This is a helper system when it comes to goals. The first of which is you can help activate your RAS when you write out your goals. Your brain will attach a deeper processing and and a higher weight to goals or to things that they see written on paper or that you have actually written out. So even if your main goal tracking system is an app or reminder on your phone or anything like that, physically writing something out will attach a deeper meaning, and your RAS will be activated and help you find different things in your environment to help you achieve that goal. The second is, it's kind of maybe a little woo-woo. There is a ton of research behind this though, that when you visualize a goal or visualize anything, you have a higher amount of brain activation. So repeatedly imagining success or reminding yourself of your goals will maintain that steady stimulation of your RAS. Because, something that your brain paid close attention to at one time doesn't mean it's going to pay attention to it all the time. So if you think of your goal once and then don't think about it again for, a couple months, your brain's going to realize, okay, that's not important anymore. I can start filing that away and not bringing that into focus anymore. It's no longer going to be at the forefront of your consciousness. But if you continually have reminders set out and you're visualizing that outcome goal and the success of it, you're going to be kind of re-upping that activation of the reticular activating system. And that will help you achieve your goal. If you're attending to something and paying attention to something, you're more likely to achieve it or put the pieces and the steps in place to achieve it. So that is a really cool function of the reticular activating system. And the other piece of brain science that I want to touch on is kind of the brain shift that happens when we set a goal. So when we set a goal, we experience a shift in our identity. Now, this is super weird sounding, but also very well researched, that our brain can't distinguish between reality and imagined reality. So when we visualize, we're giving our brains a picture of the goal, and then our mind starts believing it's real. But the reality of it not being real causes tension, like within our different brain areas, kind of encouraging us to achieve that goal. I know that sounds really complicated. It's not super clear, but our brain will start thinking that that is a part of us and will be concerned that we don't have that. So, like if your goal is to have a puppy, you start visualizing puppies and you have a Pinterest board about puppies, your brain's gonna be like, hey, I think we have a puppy. And it's gonna be really confused why you don't. And that's what leads almost that irrational need to have a puppy, right? Your brain is causing tension and saying, hey, this is something that I'm pretty sure we need. It's part of our identity now. It needs to be achieved. So, I'm not gonna say that writing goals are anything like puppies because clearly, puppies win every time, but that is what our brain does when we set a goal and we visualize it and we give it that imagined reality. Our brain starts thinking that is real and we need that to happen. When we achieve a goal, our body will release dopamine, which gives us a sense of pleasure. It boosts your mood and also keeps you motivated and focused. So this is really key when it comes to those process and performance goals. When we keep them short term and we're always achieving those kind of small, minute, short-term goals, we're constantly giving ourselves a dopamine hit and keeping us motivated to keep going and keep hitting that next milestone in our goal. The drawback to this is when we fail to meet a goal, our body's pretty cruel. It just shuts that dopamine off. So if we think back to point number one about that shift in identity, our brain already thinks that goal is part of our identity. So having to acknowledge we didn't meet a goal will inspire feelings of loss, sadness, sometimes anxiety, fear. Obviously the weight we place on these goals are going to impact how we feel if we fail to meet a goal. But it is just a really important and interesting piece I wanted to point out about just those natural systems and really, evolutionary based systems that our brain relies on and produces. when it comes to goal setting. So Edwin A. Locke is a pioneer in the area of goal setting. He's been doing research since the 60s, and even right up until fairly recent times, he's been producing research articles and things about goal setting. So over his long experience with goals and goal setting, he has identified 4 core concepts for goal setting. We'll go through each of them, but they are difficulty, specificity, reward or reminders, and goal efficacy. So in relation to point number 1, which is difficulty of goals, he has found out through research that individuals who have highly ambitious goals have a better performance and output rate than those who don't. So the higher the goal, the higher the performance. Harder goals are more motivating and more satisfying after completion. I think maybe we've probably all experienced this, maybe not necessarily in writing, but in other areas. That kind of feeling of satisfaction and that dopamine hit that we get when we achieve a very difficult, very hard-earned goal. Difficult is good, but outside of your capability is not. So that's kind of the caveat to this one. If you set a goal that is so far-reaching and out of the realm of possibility, we A, fail to take them seriously, and B, experience failure when we try to achieve them and don't, and then it leads to frustration and it leads to that cutoff of dopamine. So it is important to try and push the boundaries of what we think we're capable of, but to kind of temper that with, it needs to be a realistic goal. So there's tons of research in kind of the sports psychology area of this. This is really important for athletes who are wanting to meet different benchmarks and things like that, but it definitely can be applied to writing as well. It's frustrating enough to have to balance everything and also our own expectations. So it's good to keep that kind of in the realm of reality for sure. This, I do want to mention, this does take practice, and I have had to find that out, I guess sometimes the hard way. It takes practice and some trial and error to figure out what your realistic expectations are and what's a reasonably difficult goal. So for example, I have set myself goals that, maybe if I didn't work full time, or if I didn't have, 3 kids to run after, or sports, or whatever, supper that has to be on the table at the same time every day, sure, I could achieve that goal, but in my present reality, there's no way. So I've had to kind of figure out, okay, even if it disappoints me to admit that I can't push myself and achieve what I think I can, in the long run, it's far better for me to figure out what is a realistically difficult but achievable goal. So this one I have found to be kind of tricky to figure out what is your personal experience and what's going to work for you. The second one is specificity. So we touched on this when we looked at the outcome goals along with the process and performance goals. It's best to break them down. There's tons of different methodologies. I think the one probably most of us are familiar with is the SMART acronym. Kind of more modern day research has expanded that to SMARTER. I'm not going to go through them because that's the easiest thing to just kind of Google or find a really fun infographic on Pinterest or something like that. But SMARTER stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound. And the additional ER that has kind of come about to be a little more mainstream is evaluative or ethical, and rewarding. We touch on some of this stuff later on, but something I would like to point out is just like those frequent dopamine hits we get from breaking down, like even breaking it down to a ridiculous level, right? It's good to feel those bits of achievement, and some bits from evolutionary psychology where our bodies truly are programmed to care more about short-term goals than long-term goals. From an evolutionary standpoint, the future is uncertain. I mean, maybe not even evolutionary, maybe it's still modern day reality, but the future is uncertain and dangerous. So, kind of banking on long-term goals and long-term success wasn't smart from an evolutionary standpoint. So it's really about that short-term achievement, because that is more guaranteed. So we want to break down those large future goals and then bring in that visualization piece, especially when it's realistic, because this helps combat that almost like a preservation mechanism, right? Like, why are we putting time and effort into something long-term that may never happen when we can be doing something fun and in the moment? And not saying that's not a great thing, but when we have those big outcome goals we want to achieve, we do still need to focus on that big future thing that our body and our brains are desperately trying to convince us not to. So almost working against evolution a bit here, but that specificity and the breaking down of the big goals helps to combat that a little bit. So in addition to the SMARTER acronym or whatever kind of system you like to use to break down your big goals into something smaller, there's these additional key premises to that. So the first one being values. Effective goals target our values. It's really what keeps us going. Like, if we have a goal that we don't have that full buy-in that really targets what we want kind of on a personal level, we're not going to achieve it to the same extent. So yeah, the more we align our core values and principles, the more we're going to get out of that goal. The second of which is introspection. So accepting our strengths, being aware of our strengths and weaknesses, enables us to choose appropriate actions. I mean, I can say that I'm going to sit for 4 hours every night and write, but I know about myself that I can't. Like, there's no way I'm going to make that work. I need to be kind of realistic and give myself that reality check, because I'm setting myself up for failure if I don't. And then lastly, self-evaluation. So good goals don't need validation from other people, because it's coming from within us. Like, it's that intrinsic motivation to keep going. Achieving our goals gives us that self-esteem boost and say, yeah, we can do this. And it's more incentive to keep setting goals and keep achieving goals. So just some things to keep in mind when you're setting goals. Try and keep these things in mind, that they target your values, that you're giving yourself that time to think and be introspective about what it is you're capable of, and what is something that maybe wouldn't be a good route. And then just taking that time to celebrate your successes and feel that achievement intrinsically. So the third core concept from Locke's research is rewards and reminders. So again, from an evolutionary standpoint, humans are used to having reminders to maintain our motivation. So if you think of hunger, our bodies will often remind us when we're hungry. And so the food is your motivation, eating is your reward, easy peasy. Cold, our bodies will remind us, hey, we're cold. Seeking warmth will be our reward, and it will keep us motivated to find that warmth, that kind of thing. But when it's not a physical or tangible goal, and we're not looking at it from an evolution standpoint, it's easy to lose motivation without providing some sort of external reward or external motivation. So the key to this that research has kind of come about to find is that keeping rewards small and tied to a successful goal completion are the most meaningful. So really acknowledging progress helps keep that motivation up. And it's not the reward itself that you're working towards. It's about the motivation to keep going once you've achieved that goal. So research also says that disproportionately large rewards or rewards for a vague accomplishment actually decrease future motivation. So it works against you. So something like, treating yourself to a coffee with a friend when you hit your goal, something kind of small, but acknowledging your achievements are the most effective. But again, tailor this to you. You know yourself best. You know what rewards you. You know what motivates you. Keep that in mind when you're crafting your rewards and reminders, but it's very important to build that into your goal setting and don't say, oh, I'm going to keep that motivation. This is a goal I really want, so I don't need any external rewards or reminders. Our brain actually isn't set up to help us with that. It can achieve it. It's just not going to help us. So try and build that in when you're creating your goals. And lastly, the fourth core concept is goal efficacy. So this really targets the why. And I believe this is way more important than the how you set a goal. It's the why you set your goal. So it's very important that we choose goals that are rewarding and meaningful to us. If it's meaningful, then we're more likely to push ourselves to achieve it than if it's just something that we think we want or it's kind of vague and not really well thought out. And this kind of all relates to expectancy theory. So expectancy theory says that motivation is made up of two factors: how much you value your goal and how much you believe you can achieve it. So long-term goals are particularly susceptible to failure because our goal value and our goal belief aren't aligned to the time it takes to achieve it. So, like, for example, a short-term goal is finish a chapter. It's easy to see that progress and it's easy to see the value. That success, not to say that creating and crafting a well-written chapter isn't difficult, but it's attainable. We can see it. It's within our grasp and it feels good to get that completed. But a long-term goal of finishing the entire book, you start to think of, all these hurdles that you're going to encounter. Like, a chapter took me a month to finish. Well, the whole book's going to take over a year, and my kids are going to be this age, and this sport comes up, and you start imagining all those hurdles, which decreases your belief that you're going to get it done. And we link that back to the specificity piece and the evolution piece about our brains really not being set up to value long-term goals, and then things are just kind of working against you. So you can combat that by making the goals something that you really, really value, because the more you value the goal, the less that belief piece is going to impact it. So again, I feel that this is probably the key for successful goal completion when it comes to long-term goal planning, kind of in general, that the why of your goals is way more important. If you have a solid why, like why you want to write a book, why you want to get an agent, why you want to achieve that big writing goal, if you have that figured out and it's very meaningful to you, you're going to have a lot more success in achieving it for sure. So yeah, the how is typically what we focus on, but it's the why that's key. And I think for sure it'll make or break your goals. But also make goals with the intention of revising them. The best goals are the ones that allow you to have those successes and feel more confident, because if goals make you feel bad or like you're a failure, then they're not working for you. They should be meant to be a guide and to kind of be checked in on a regular basis. You're not going to get that dopamine hit. You're not going to get any of those bonuses and benefits of goal completion if your goals are setting you up to fail or your circumstances have changed that to make that goal unrealistic. So don't set them in stone and don't tie your value to them, because you're going to like that feeling of failing doesn't help. It decreases your motivation, and it also decreases that belief in yourself piece that we just talked about. And then you have so much stuff working against you. So take a look at them, weekly or monthly or however often you need to, and make changes and alterations. I think key here is like tracking your goals and seeing where you have successes and where you need to improve, and then giving yourself some grace in the situations that aren't working. Yeah, and then lastly, there's been lots of little messages when I was doing this research that have hit home for me. Yours may be different. I certainly hope that something that I brought here today has been helpful and maybe struck a chord with you. Yours may be different than mine, but these are just a few that stood out to me and really have kept coming up in the different studies and different research articles I've been reading from. So create goals that are challenging and make them smarter, like that's specific and measurable and all that. Choose a goal that's meaningful to you and aligns with your values and that big picture goal. Track your success and reward yourself. Don't forget that part. And write out and visualize your goals. Keep a reminder. It might sound kind of hokey or whatever, but like a post-it note beside your computer or something like that, because really truly those reminders will activate your brain and help you. You want your brain to work with you, not against you. And then lastly, there was just too many weird things that I came across when I was researching that I couldn't not share. So some random handy tips when it comes to goals. The placebo effect works. So that whole concept of, you're losing motivation and maybe you're supposed to be writing 3 pages or something like that, and you're kind of stuck on page 1. If you say like, okay, just one more paragraph, you kind of keep moving the carrot and giving yourself just small little bits of incentive. Again, it's just little goal achievement. It's just, even if you have to break it down to a paragraph at a time, it works. Make breaks fun. So I always think of my friend Emily Wilson. Her Instagram page is, or her Instagram stories is full of her dancing and singing and just having a great time. I always think of that when I think of this. Make breaks fun. Go for a walk, take a dance break, give your brain a break. That is proven research that does help. It might seem like taking a break from your goal is kind of counterproductive, but it works. Flip your outcome goal. So take it from something hard and seemingly unachievable, break it down. That is very helpful. And then to phrase those goals positively. So if you're struggling with something, don't say, stop, stop turning on the TV and start writing. Flip it. Say, something more positive. Phrase it in a way that makes you a little more excited to achieve those goals. And then $5 in a lighter goes a long way. So this is a really interesting research paper I read, that your brain has a really hard time destroying money. So if you put a $5 bill and a lighter on your desk, and that's your reminder that if you don't achieve your goal, then you're going to take that $5 bill and send it up in flames, your brain does not like that, and it will do what it can. Like, that can be a surprisingly effective motivator. So just some weird and handy things I came across while I was doing some research that, if nothing else, stuck with you for any of my other boring brain science bits. Hopefully something here will help with your goals.
There we have it, the psychology behind goal setting. Hopefully some of that was useful to you. As I mentioned earlier, take what you can, use what works. Not everything's going to apply to where you are on your writing journey, but hopefully something will have been useful to you. And also, like I said at the beginning, in the Writer Mom Journal and in the accompanying workbook, there are more of these kind of tips and tricks and that kind of thing. And all of you beautiful people get it for free because you're part of our Writer Moms Conference. So we will get that out to you shortly. We're going to do a run through of it together, I guess. I'm gonna have to come up with a clever name for that. But because so many people are going to be potentially starting going through the workbook, and it is set up as a daily challenge almost, because so many people are going to be doing it together, we're going to try and check in on a regular basis together and give each other ideas and support. So there'll be more information about that coming along shortly. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks for hanging out. I hope I didn't bore you too much with brain science, and I will chat with you soon.